afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Alabama Nature Center Facebook Live post today. Today, we're going to talk about the fall forest and trees. I don't know about you, but the fall brings out the kid in me more than any other season. And I think because when I go hiking in the fall, I can fill my pockets with treasure after treasure after treasure. Because it not only is it color change season, it's the season for putting out fruits for a lot of the seed-bearing trees. So today, we're going to talk about a few trees and a few things that you might want to know about identifying trees so you can go out and do that on your own. We're going to talk a little bit about how animals might use those trees, and then I'm going to show you some things. What do you do with all those treasures that you collect in your pockets? Because maybe you have a treasure habit like me. So first we're going to talk about what makes one tree different from another. And I'm sure you guys already know that when you're looking at trying to figure out what a tree is, sometimes you look at the bark, and sometimes you look at the leaves, and sometimes you look at the overall shape of the tree. So we're going to start off talking today about leaf shape. Now, here's my treasures I collected this morning on the way out, but I also have a couple of twigs. Now, might I say that in the making of this video, no trees were harmed. There recently has been a hurricane, I'm sure you're aware, and there is lots of deadfall all over the property. So I picked up a few things to talk about them. And you see the things in my hand are all green. And I'm sure you guys know what those are called. They are evergreens. So when I first go to look at a leaf, one of the first things usually that I'm going to be asked if I look at a key or a field guide or a nature book is the tree that I have, is it evergreen or is it deciduous? Broad and deciduous, meaning it turns colors and falls off of the tree in the fall. We're going to start off with evergreens. So some evergreens that we have common to our area are our pine trees, and then we have red cedar as well. And they may ask you, is your leaf needle-shaped or scale-like? And that's why I have the red cedar in my hand, because although you may or may not be able to see it, each one of those little sprigs is made up of scale-like leaves, one on top of the other. And that would be our cedar tree. The pine trees have needle-shaped leaves, and the biggest differences among them are how long they are and how many leaves are in a bundle. Every pine needle can have a bundle of 2 to 5. They're held together with a fascicle at the end of it. This is a short-leaf pine. Its needles are twisted, and they are in a bundle of 2. This pine, a little different, a little bit bigger. They have longer shaped leaves, and they are in a bundle of 3. A little bit twisted as well, and held together with the fascicle at the end. And this is a loblolly. Now some trees may even go even further. You might have to look at their cones. You see their cones are different shaped, and the cone holds the seeds of the tree. There's a couple of cool experiments you can do with that. I'll let you guys look them up, but what happens if the pine cone gets wet? And what happens if it gets dry? And when do the seeds come out? I'm going to let you guys answer that, because we may take a look at some pine seeds. We've had several around lately. Okay, so pine trees. If you look at our forest, we are on the Turkey Ridge Trail right now, and if you look up at the skyline, this is a forest that is in the middle of succession. During succession, the primary trees come in. We've got the tall yellow gold trees on the right back in the distance are your tulip poplars. They grow tall and straight to reach the sunshine. And then you can see our big pine tree there on the left. Pine trees are heliophiles, meaning they like the sun. And so that tree has grown tall and straight as well to reach the sun, but you will notice that there are other trees starting to encroach upon its sun space. And so this forest is in transition, and it's going from a pine dominant type forest to the oaks and hickories are starting to move in and take over some of its shade space. But that's natural, and that's how things should work in a forest when it's left alone for a period of time. So we looked at some pine trees, and you may have collected pine cones. I like to collect pine cones and do beautiful things with them. Now look at some other trees that we have in our area. So here's a tree. It's a small one, so we can reach it. That has a broad leaf. It's deciduous, not evergreen. But here's something special about this leaf. This leaf has many parts to it. And how I would know where the leaf starts, I have to walk up to the tip of the tree. I'm going to ask Matt to pull one down for me. He can do it. There we go. And you would start at the tip of the leaf and follow it all the way down to where the leaf joins the stem. And where it joins the stem, there is a bud in there. And that's how I know that this is just one leaf. Its bud is all the way back in there. The leaf in my hand, with its leaflets or parts, there are no buds in between each of those leaflets. So we have a hickory. Hickory around here, they can start 5, 7, 9 leaflets. Different species have different amounts of leaflets on them. And in the fall, it's time for them to put out hickory nuts. I love hickory nuts. Hickory nuts are yummy for me and you. We can talk about that in another time. But a hickory nut has a husk, a green husk around the outside until it gets older and it turns dark. And the forest critters like the hickory nuts as well. This one was chewed by a squirrel, so it has a story to tell. First they eat the outside, and then later on in the season, after the outsides are all gone, then they eat out the inside. You've got to have pretty sharp teeth to be able to get into that hickory nut. But if you've ever tasted a hickory nut, then you might know it's worth it. They're very sweet nutted trees. So that's one animal that uses a hickory. But here's another thing you might find around the base of your hickory. So it's fall, it's time for overwintering to begin. I have a hickory twig here that was just laying on the ground, but it's not just any old hickory twig. It is a girdler beetle twig. If you look at the very tip of that twig, what you'll notice is that it is rounded all the way around the edges. A girdler beetle, the female, who usually does this August to October, chewed all the way around the edge of that tree and left it just hanging on the top of the tree. And then she laid her eggs inside the end that she girdled. And now those larvae are somewhere up in this twig, and they're going to stay there until next June, growing and eating and growing and eating out the twig. It keeps them safe if it falls to the ground from other predators, and if it's still up there in the tree, they're still living in there. But they will stay in there for a year until next August through October, when the female comes out to start a process all over again. Girdler beetle twigs. It's a fun thing to find. All right, so we've got hickory trees and pine trees. One of our understory trees, which means that you find them below the high trees, or kind of the middle layer in the forest. This one has kind of a heart-shaped leaf. It's a very distinctive leaf. It has no leaflets or parts like the hickory tree. This is a redbud tree. You'll notice them in January and February when they're one of the first trees to put out those beautiful pink flowers. People like to put them in their yards, but they're beautiful to find in the forest as well. And right next to our redbud tree, we have an acorn tree. Does anybody know what an acorn tree is? All the acorn trees are oak trees. They all produce acorns. Those are oak tree seeds. So we have acorns all over the ground. And there are white oaks, and there are red oaks and black oaks. There are lots of different kinds of oaks. This branches that I have right here, I have an example of a white oak. Let me find you a really nice leaf. And The white oak leaves, the oak leaves always have parts on them. And each of these parts is called a lobe, like your earlobe. And the parts on a white oak tree have very round, smooth edges. Red oak trees have the same parts. They have lobes, separated into lobes, but look at the tips. They're not rounded, they're pointed, very sharp. Now, how you can always tell an oak tree when you find an oak tree, if you look at the tip of one of the branches, you will find that there are many buds at the tip. That is a common characteristic of oaks. So if it's not acorn season and you don't see any acorns on the ground, the next thing that you can look for are those terminal or end of the branches leaf buds. And that'll be where your tree starts growing from next year. Now, why do I care if they're white oaks or red oaks? Well, if you were going to eat these acorns, then you would want to know, because white oaks are a little bit sweeter than red oaks. And acorns were a staple for native peoples here for a very, very long time. You can make flour out of the acorns, and you can store it, and it's a bulky food to put in your system. Now, wildlife likes them as well. I'm going to show you my pointy oak acorn here. And I opened up on the inside, and it is bright orange. It has a reddish color. And then I'm going to show you my white oak acorn, which I cut open from the white oak, and on the inside it is white. The difference in the two acorns is the red oaks have a lot more tannins than the white oaks, so they're a little bit more bitter. Now, wildlife has adapted along with the oak trees for a very long time and have different methods for surviving with these two different food choices. Chipmunks, they have found, will store both acorns, but they will leave the red oaks until later in the winter. So all winter long they sit in their burrows in the tunnels under the ground, leaching out the tannic acids. And they will eat them finally when it gets sweeter during the time of year when they are eating all their foods. Deer like them both. A lot of people will say, oh, I need to plant white oaks because I like deer. Well, it's true, they do like the white oaks, but they will eat the red oaks as well. Deer will eat food when they find it. Okay, I have a few more things in my display. What do you do with the things you find? So while I've been collecting, we have found something else from oak trees. And these two things in my hand are oak apple galls. And this is another one. This is an empty oak apple gall. So there are over 50 different species of wasps who will lay their eggs in the undifferentiated cells of the oak trees. That means they're kind of like the oak tree stem cells. They can be any part of the tree once they grow. And they'll lay their eggs there, and then the tree, in response to the insect, will produce this growth over the top of the eggs. Now, it's an okay thing for the tree, doesn't really hurt it, but what it does for the insect is it gives the insect a place to live and grow and mature until it falls off the tree. And once it falls off the tree, that insect will chew its way out to become an adult wasp, and the cycle starts all over again. Now, usually these are pretty tiny wasps, and different wasps have different relationships with different oak trees. They're very, very specialized. Okay, we're going to move on down our trail and see if we can find some more trees to look at. This is one of my favorite trees. Of course, you can see it had a blowdown last year in the spring, and what's happening is there are parts of it that are still alive, so it is putting out shoots, and those shoots may turn into trees given enough time to differentiate and put out their roots and grow tall. This one's on the ground. If you will stand right over here, there is a tall sourwood It's growing kind of like it's leaning, which would be why this one fell. It leaned over too much to reach the sun from around that pine tree. Sourwoods are beautiful. They'll put out a pinkish, purplish colored leaf some years, and in the winter time, all their twigs will turn purple. They are gorgeous to look at. And I'll pull a little leaf off here. It's already turned colors according to the daylight zone, and it's going to change. It's going to drop soon. If you look at this leaf, there are no projections or lobes on it. They call that entire. The other thing that you'll notice about a leaf is that sometimes they have different edges. And all along the edge, your guide may ask you, is it hairy? Is it pointed? Is it smooth? On the back of a sourwood leaf, if you run your finger along the edges, there are little hairs that will stick up from the midrib, so you can identify it. And not only do we like it for its beautiful spring flowers that smell so good and taste so good in sourwood honey, but we like it because if you are a hungry hiker, you can take a piece off and chew on it. So I'm going to pull a little green leaf here just to prove that you really can do it, and take a little piece and chew it. It's pretty tart, kind of got a lot of vitamin C in it, but it's not such a bad thing. And on a really hot day or when you're really dry, it's a nice, fun thing to do while you're hiking on the trail. So, sourwood. Now we're going to look up at our tulip poplars in our lower wet area. There's a little creek that runs along the bottom there. And our tulip poplars, looking up at the sky, are those yellowish brown leaves that are kind of against the blue of the sky. I've got a picture of a leaf over here, but notice while you're looking that those trees grow tall and straight. They are trying to reach the sun as well. And their leaf shape has a few lobes on it. It only has 4. 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. It reminds me of a cat face with little ears and whiskers. A tulip poplar is a good tall straight tree to build houses with, and they put out this time of year something that's really fun as well. You may find walking along the ground these tulip poplar Samaria. It is a group of seeds. This comes from the flowers. Now it's kind of cool by itself, but watch this. Go ahead, Matt, put that hand out. I am going to pull apart the seeds, and you can look inside and see how many seeds are stuck inside that tulip poplar. Now they call them Samaria because they have wings on them, and it is a winged seed. That's enough. So that's most of them right there. Look at all those seeds in there. And I don't know if you'll be able to see or not, but if you drop it, it should curl like a helicopter and fall to the ground. Winged seeds go away from the tree. Here, I'm going to do it one more time. They have that extra part that helps them to flutter in the ground. Very fun. Very fun. Okay, I just have to pick up my goodies before we move on again. I like to have treasures. In my treasures, here's a tree we don't have right here. I found walking on the boardwalks here at the Alabama Nature Center. These little things, do you know what they are? They are actually cones. And these cones come from the bald cypress. Here's one that has been split in half, and inside you could see their seeds. Now, a long time ago we had a bird that used to be the seed dispersal mechanism for this tree. Carolina parakeets would eat these seeds because their bill was especially good at getting into them and cracking them open, and they carried seeds from place to place. Now that bird is extinct. We don't have Carolina parakeets anymore. And so there's a different story being made throughout our forests. Here at the Alabama Nature Center, we are fortunate. This is one of the places where I've been where you can see that sweet bay magnolias grow very tall. If you look up in the overstory, there is a long, entire evergreen leaf. And those leaves come from the sweet bay magnolia. Those are very tall sweet bays. They've been there for a long time. If you look closer and you happen to find a sweet bay magnolia, you would find a leaf that is shiny white, that is white on one side and green on the other. Whenever you're walking the boardwalks and trails out here, that's one of the things the kids will often ask. What is this white leaf? What is this white leaf? And that's what they are. Now here's a fun tree. It is in the magnolia family, and if you tear it and smell it, it has a fragrant smell. My treasures has a cone from a sweet bay magnolia. Now this one has dropped its seeds already, but late summer they have bright orangish red seeds, and the birds like to eat them. So first they'll come out, and then the cone will drop later on as the tree continues to grow. Okay, one of my last favorite trees that we're going to talk about today is a beech tree. So we're going to walk over to a beech this way. And here's our beech tree. Now, this time of year, they're always recognizable. If you look at the bark on this tree, it's very, very smooth. Very smooth. And that doesn't change as it ages. In fact, you may walk by some very old beech trees where people have carved their initials in there, and they'll still be there 100 years later because the bark is so smooth and the tree just heals around it. The leaves on the beech tree are entire as well. They have a drip tip end so water will roll down and hang on there for a bit. There are no lobes or projections. It has a smooth margin or edge like the margin of your paper, and it has these very distinctive veins that make the leaf appear rough when you come upon it or see it. Now here's a fun thing about beech trees. Beech trees will keep their leaves all winter long. So they may curl up and they may turn brown, but it's a fun tree to put in your property because all winter long they keep their brown leaves, and it adds a lot of character. I want to show you something fun that beeches do. They also put out beech nuts. And I have to go all the way back to my collection of things I found this morning. Bring over my white bucket and turn them upside down in there. Because this morning I found some beech nuts. Let's see if I can find them now. Well, here is the husk from the beech nut. And beech nuts mast every 2 to 3 years. Ours here at the Alabama Nature Center are an every 2-year seed producer. And let's see if I can find you the nuts on the inside. These two little pyramid, I guess, shaped nuts came from the inside of that husk. They are very yummy, very delicious, and highly nutritious for your forest animals. You can roast them too and eat them, and they taste pretty good. But you'll have a hard time finding them when the animals do find them. Also in my collected treasures this morning, I found some sweet gum balls that still had seeds in them. So I'm going to pull out my broadleaves because I had fun collecting the colored leaves. And I'm going to pull out my pines and the other shaped leaves here and let you look at the seeds that are left in the bottom. Because the sweet gum has 2 different kinds of seeds, and that is pretty cool. Get out my beech nuts. Here's my beech nut. Here's another beech nut. Do you see the little speckles? Oops, let me take this one out and this one out. There are 2 types of seeds inside that sweet gum. There's the black one with the wing. It's a winged seed. It falls kind of like your maples and your tulip poplars. And then there are these tiny little dots. And when you shake a sweet gum seed, hundreds of those tiny little seeds can come out. Now, when I say sweet gum seed, this is what I'm talking about. That is a sweet gum ball. You may have them all over your yard. You may have been a victim of sweet gum abuse when somebody has thrown a sweet gum ball at you, or you may have rolled your feet on them. Sweet gums have pretty interesting leaves that turn a bright red, purple color. They have a lot of yellow in them too. They are star-shaped leaves. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lobes, and they are pointed. And they're not smooth on the edges. They have tiny little teeth or points on the edges of the leaf. So seeds, I love to collect them. I love to watch them. And now I'm going to show you a couple things that we do with it. So, a bag takes you a long way in collecting seeds. You can display your seed collection in something like this, a tray. You can display your seed collection in something like that. I walked into Hobby Lobby the other day and they were selling bags of woody things to put in a jar. They're beautiful. And I'm going to show you some things we did with our leaves this week here at the Alabama Nature Center. This was pretty simple. We made bookmarks with the colored leaves that we found. They cut them up, they put them on a piece of packing tape, put another piece of packing tape over the top of it, and now it's a pretty fall treasure to keep. And don't forget, it's always fun to do leaf rubbings. And you can make your own art. You can make your own Thanksgiving placemats with leaf rubbings. And one more, we did some leaf printing. We put some paint on those leaves and slapped them on paper and made art that way. So it's fall. Enjoy the forest, enjoy the trees, enjoy the things that are happening all around. Until we see you next week on Facebook Live, y'all have a good week and enjoy the weather.